Hello everyone, welcome to today's session. In this session, we'll work on the data wrangling. So third step is my data wrangling. And data wrangling generally means cleaning your data. So if you have a large data set, you might be having some null values or you can say NaN values. So it's very important that you remove all the unnecessary items that are present in your data set, and removing this directly affects your accuracy. So I just go ahead and clean my data by removing all the NaN values and unnecessary columns which has a null value in the data set. Next, I am performing data wrangling. Suppose to all I'll check whether my data set is null or not. So I'll say Titanic ship data, which is the name of my data set, and I'll say is null. So this will basically tells me what all values are null and will return me a boolean result. So this generally checks the missing data and your result will be in boolean format, as in the result will be true or false. So false means if it is not null and true means if it is null. So let me just run this. Over here you can see the values as true or false. So false is where the value is not null and true is where the value is null. So here you can see in the cabin column. So we have a very first value which is null. So we have to do something on this. So you can see that we have a large data set. So the counting does not stop and we can actually see some of it. We can actually print the number of passengers who have the NaN value in each column. So I say Titanic ship underscore data is null and I want the sum of it. Then I will say dot sum. So this is generally print the number of passengers who have the NaN value in each column. So we can see that we have missing value in each column, that is 177. Then we have the maximum value in the cabin column and we have very less in the embark column, that is 2. So here if you don't want to see the numbers, you can also plot a head map and then you can visually analyze it. So let me just do that as well. So I'll say SNS dot heat map and say y tick labels false. Now run this. As we have already seen that there were 3 columns in which missing data value was present. So this might be age. So over here almost 20% of age column has a missing value. Then we have the cabin columns. So this is quite a large value, and then we have 2 values for the embark column as well. Add CMap for color coding. So I'll say CMap. So if I do this, so the graph becomes more attractive. So yellow stands for true, or you can say the values are null. So here we have computed that we have the missing value of age. We have a lot of missing values in the cabin column and we have very less value which is not even visible in the embark column as well. So to remove these missing values, you can either replace the values and you can put in some dummy values to it, or you can simply drop the column. So here let us suppose to pick the age column. So first let me just plot a box plot and they will analyze with having a column as age. So I'll say the SNS dot box plot. I'll say X is equal to passenger class, so it's P class. I'll say Y is equal to age and the data set that I'll be using in Titanic ship. So I'll say the data goes to Titanic ship data. You can see the age is in first class and second class tend to be older rather than we have it in the third class. Well, that depends on the experience how much you earn, or might be there for n numbers of reasons. So here we concluded that passengers who had traveling in class 1 and class 2 tend to be older than what we have in the class 3. So we have found that we have some missing values in EM. Now, one way is to either just drop the column or you can just simply fill in some values to them. So this method is called as imputation. Now to perform data wrangling or cleaning it, it is for spring at the head of the dataset. So I'll say Titanic dot head. So it's Titanic ship underscore data. Let's say I just want the 5 rows. So here we have survive, which is again categorical. So in this particular column, I can apply logistic regression. So this can be my y value or the value that you need to predict. Then we have the passenger class. We have the name. Then we have ticket number. Fare given. So over here we have seen that is keeping. We have a lot of null values, or you can say that any invalid which is quite visible as well. So first of all, we'll just drop this column for dropping it. I'll say Titanic ship underscore data and I'll simply type in drop and the column which I need to drop. So I have to drop the cabin column. I mention the x is equal to 1 and I'll say in place also to true. So now again I just print the head and to see whether this column has been removed from the dataset or not. So I'll say Titanic ship dot head. So as you can see here, we don't have given column anymore. Now you can also drop the NA values. So I'll say Titanic ship data dot drop all the NA values, or you can say NaN, which is not a number, and I will say in place is equal to true. So here let me again plot the heat map and let's say what the values which will be for showing a value of null values. Has it been removed or not? So I'll say SNS dot heat map. I'll pass in the dataset. I'll check it is null. I say y tick labels is equal to false and I don't want color coding. So again I say false. So this will basically help me to check whether my values have been removed from the dataset or not. So as you can see here, I don't have any null values. So it's entirely black. Now you can actually know the sum as well. So I'll just go above. So I'll just copy this part and I just use the sum function to calculate the sum. So here that tells me that dataset is clean, as in the dataset does not contain any null value or any NA value. So now we have wrangled the data. You can see cleaner data. So here we have done just one step in data wrangling, that is just removing one column out of it. Now you can do a lot of things. You can actually fill in the values with some other values, or you can just calculate the mean and then you can just fit in the null value. But now if I see my data set, so I'll say Titanic ship data dot head. But now if I see you over here, I have a lot of string values. So this has to be converted to a categorical variable in order to implement logistic regression. So what we will do, we will convert this to categorical variable into some dummy variables, and this can be done using pandas because logistic regression just takes two values. So whenever you apply machine learning, you need to make sure that there are no string values present because it won't be taking these as your input variables. So using string, you don't have to predict anything, but in my case, I have the survived columns. So I need to get how many people 10 may survive and how many did not. So 0 stand for did not survive and 1 stand for survive. So now let me just convert these variables into dummy variables. So I'll just use pandas and I say pd not get dummies. You can simply press tab to autocomplete and say Titanic ship data, and I'll pass the sex. So you can just simply click on Shift plus Tab to get more information on this. So if I run this, you'll see that 0 basically stand for not a female and 1 stand for it is female. Similarly, for male, 0 stands for it's not male and 1 stand for male. Now we don't require both these columns because one column itself is enough to tell us whether it's male or you can say female or not. So let's say if I want to keep only male, we'll say if the values of male is 1, so it is definitely a male and is not a female. So that is how you don't need both of these values. So for that, I just remove the first column, let's say a female. So I'll say drop first and true. It has given me just one column which is male and has a value 0 and 1. Let me just set this as a variable sex. So over here, I can say sex dot head. I just want to see the first 5 rows. So this is how my data looks like. Now here, we have done it is for sex. Then we have the numerical values in age. We have the numerical values in spouses. Then we have the ticket number. We have the pair and we have embark as well. So in embark, the values are in SC and Q. So here also we can apply this get dummy function. So let's say I will take a variable, let's say embark. I'll use the pandas library. I need the column name that is embarked. Let me just print the head of it. So I'll say embark dot head. So we have C, Q and S. Now here also we can drop the first column because these two values are enough with the passengers is either traveling for Q, that is Queenstown, S for Southam, and if both the values are 0, then definitely the passenger is from Cherbourg, that is the third value. So you can again drop the first value. So I'll say drop. Let me just run this. So this is how my output looks like. Now similarly, you can do it for passenger class as well. So here also we have 3 classes, 1, 2 and 3. So I'll just copy the whole statement. So let's say I want this variable name. Let's say PCL. I'll pass in the column name that is P class and I'll just drop the first column. So here also the values will be 1, 2 or 3 and I'll just remove the first column. So here we just left with 2 and 3. So if both the values are 0, then definitely the passengers traveling the first class. So we have made the values as categorical now. My next step would be to concatenate all these new rows into a data set. We can see Titanic ship data using the pandas will just concatenate all these columns. So I'll say pd.concat and then say we have to concatenate sex. We have to concatenate embark and PCL and then I will mention the access to 1. I'll just run. This can you print the head. So you can see that these columns have been added over here. So we have the male column which basically tells where the person is male or it's a female. Then we have the embark which is basically Q and S. So if it's traveling from Queenstown value would be 1 else it would be 0. And if both of these values are 0, it is definitely traveling from Cherbourg. Then we have the passenger class as 2 and 3. So the values of both these is 0. Then passengers traveling in class 1. So I hope you got this till now. Now these are the irrelevant column that we have done over here. So we can just drop these columns. We'll drop in P class the embarked column and the sex column. So I'll just type in Titanic ship data dot drop and mention the columns that I want to drop. So I even delete the P class passengers ID because it's nothing but just the index value which is starting from 1. So I'll drop this as well then. I don't want name as well. So I'll delete name as well. Then what else we can drop? We can drop the ticket as well. And then I'll just mention the access else, say in place is equal to true. So my column name starts uppercase. So these have been dropped. Now let me just bring my data set again. So this is my final data set, guys. So over here we have the survive, we have the age, we have the sib-sp, we have the pulse, we have the fair, male, and these we have just converted. So here we have just performed data angling for you can see clean the data, and then we have just converted the values of gender to male, then embark to Q and S, and the passenger class to 2 and 3. So this was all about my data wrangling or just cleaning the data. In the next session, we'll work and the next steps for source code. You can find the link in descriptions. So if you have any doubt, you can add your doubt in our comment section. Thank you so much for watching.